When he finally was convinced he had us interested in astronomy, Dad started a new series of wall paintings dealing with stars. On one wall, he made a scale drawing of the major planets, ranging from little Mercury, represented by a circle about as big as a marble, to Jupiter, as big as a basketball. On another, he showed the planets in relation to their distances from the sun, with Mercury the closest and Neptune the farthest away, almost in the kitchen. Pluto still hadn't been discovered, which was just as well, because really there wasn't room for it. Dr. Harlow Shapley of Harvard gave Dad 100 or more photographs of stars, nebulae, and solar eclipses. Dad hung these on the wall near the floor. He explained that if they were up any higher, or the conventional level for pictures, the smaller children wouldn't be able to see them. There was still some wall space left, and Dad had more than enough ideas to fill it. He tacked up a piece of cross-section graph paper, which was 1,000 lines long and 1,000 lines wide, and thus contained exactly 1,000,000 little squares. You hear people talk a lot about 1,000,000, he said, but not many people have ever seen exactly 1,000,000 things at the same time. If a man has $1,000,000, he has exactly as many dollars as there are little squares on that chart. Do you have $1,000,000, Daddy? Bill asked. No, said Dad a little ruefully. I have 1,000,000 children instead. Somewhere along the line, a man has to choose between the two. He painted diagrams in the dining room showing the difference between meters and feet, kilograms and pounds, liters and quarts. And he painted 17 mysterious-looking symbols representing each of the thurbligs on a wall near the front door. The thurbligs were discovered, or maybe a better word would be diagnosed, by Dad and Mother. Everybody has 17 of them, they said, and the thurbligs can be used in such a way as to make life difficult or easy for their possessor. A lazy man, Dad believed, always makes the best use of his thurbligs because he is too indolent to waste motions. Whenever Dad started to do a new motion study project at a factory, he'd always begin by announcing he wanted to photograph the motions of the laziest man on the job. The kind of fellow I'd want, he'd say, is the fellow who is so lazy he won't even scratch himself. You must have one of those around someplace. Every factory has them. Dad named the thurbligs for himself, Gilbreth spelled backwards, with a slight variation. They were the basic theorems of his business and resulted indirectly in such things as foot levers to open garbage cans, special chairs for factory workers, redesign of typewriters, and some aspects of the assembly line technique. Using thurbligs, Dad had shown Regal Shoe Company clerks how they could take a customer's shoe off in 7 seconds and put it back on again and lace it up in 22 seconds. Actually, a thurblig is a unit of motion or thought. Suppose a man goes into the bathroom to shave. We'll assume that his face is all lathered and he is ready to pick up his razor. He knows where the razor is, but first he must locate it with his eye. That is search, the first thurblig. His eye finds it and comes to rest. That's find, the second thurblig. Third comes select, the process of sliding the razor prior to the fourth thurblig, grasp. Fifth is transport loaded, bringing the razor up to the face. And sixth is position, getting the razor set on the face. There are 11 other thurbligs. The last one is think. When Dad made a motion study, he broke down each operation into a thurblig, and then tried to reduce the time taken to perform each thurblig. Perhaps certain parts to be assembled could be painted red and others green, so as to reduce the time required for search and find. Perhaps the parts could be moved closer to the object being assembled, so as to reduce the time required for transport loaded. Every thurblig had its own symbol, and once they were painted on the wall, Dad had us apply them to our household chores: bed making, dishwashing, sweeping, and dusting. Meanwhile, the shoe and the lighthouses had become a stop on some of the Nantucket sightseeing tours. The stop didn't entail getting out of the carriages or later the buses. But we'd hear the drivers giving lurid and inaccurate accounts of the history of the place and the family which inhabited it. Some individuals occasionally would come up to the door and ask if they could peek in, and if the house was presentable, we'd usually show them around. Then, unexpectedly, the names of strangers started appearing in a guest book which we kept in the front room. Are these friends of yours, Dad asked Mother. I never heard of them before. Maybe they're friends of the children. When we said we didn't know them, Dad questioned Tom Greaves, who admitted readily enough that he had been showing tourists through the house and lighthouses while we were at the beach. Tom's tour included the dormitories, Mother and Dad's room, where the baby stayed, and even the lavatory, where he pointed out the code alphabet. Some of the visitors, seeing the guest book on the table, thought they were supposed to sign. Dad stood at the front door as the tourists filed out and frequently collected tips. Mother was irked. I never heard of such a thing in all my born days. Imagine taking perfect strangers through our bedrooms and the house a wreck, most likely. Well, said Dad, who was convinced the tourists had come to see his visual education methods, there's no need for us to be selfish about the ideas we've developed. Maybe it's not a bad plan to let the public see what we're doing. He leaned back reflectively in his chair, an old mahogany pew from some church. Dad had found the pew disassembled in the basement of our cottage. He had resurrected it reverently, rubbed it down, put it together, and varnished it. The pew was his seat of authority in the shoe, and the only chair which fitted him comfortably and in which he could place complete confidence. I wonder how much money Tom took in, he said to Mother. Maybe we could work out some sort of an arrangement so that Tom could split tips from future admissions. The idea, said Mother. There'll be no future admissions. The very idea. Can't you take a joke? I was only joking. Where's your sense of humor? I know, Mother nodded her head. I'm not supposed to have any. But did you ever stop to think that there might be some women somewhere who might think their husbands were joking if they said they had bought 2 lighthouses and... Dad started to laugh, and he rocked back and forth, and as he rocked back and forth, he shook the house so that loose whitewash flaked off the ceiling and landed on the top of his head. When Dad laughed, everybody laughed. You couldn't help it. And Mother, after losing a battle to remain severe, joined in. By jingo, he wheezed. And I guess there are some women somewhere who wouldn't want the Morse code and planets and even thurbligs painted all over the walls of their house either. Come over here, boss, and let me take back everything I ever said about your sense of humor. Mother walked over and brushed the whitewash out of what was left of his hair. And that is the end of chapter 11, and tomorrow night we will continue with chapter 12. Have a good night, everyone.